Oh my God, where are we going with this? This year, there's been droughts and there's been fires and floods and vine pests and heat waves, and the vineyards have virtually suffered everywhere around the world. And the 2024 vintage is going to be the smallest one in history. Hello, bonjour and welcome to your new Bonheur Private Wines video brought to you by the best wine club in America. I'm your host Julien Michel, Bordeaux-trained French winemaker with 25 years experience making and tasting fine wine from around the world, from the shores of Northern California to the stunning beaches of New Zealand and virtually everywhere in between, going around the long way. Let's do this, let's talk about it. The 2024 vintage presented, let's say, a complex tapestry of weather conditions across the globe's major wine producing regions everywhere. While some areas faced extreme weather events, others experienced more favorable conditions, leading to varying levels of production and quality. Here, I want to give you a quick overview of the latest vintage for each major wine country and continent. And stay tuned because all of this aggregated leads to a bombshell at the end. Let's go. The 2024 French vintage was marked by a challenging growing season, to say the least. Excessive rainfall in the spring and often into summer led to problems with tons of fungal diseases like mildew, while some areas had heat waves in the summer causing water stress and premature ripening. Some headlines even said 2024 would be one of the smallest for France in a century, although I actually quite debunked that in a previous video because yes, I tried to do that for you. By the way, make sure to subscribe if you're not already so you never miss any new upload and any wine world news. I'm not gonna expand on France too much. I'll link to the 2024 French vintage video at the end of this one and in the video description because I've covered it already there. But in France overall, despite the challenges, the harvest yielded smaller quantities, but we should still expect some quality wines in regions like Bordeaux or Burgundy, the Rhone Valley or even Languedoc-Roussillon. So let's move on to Italy. Italy's 2024 vintage was characterized by a mix of positive and negative factors. While the north experienced excessive rainfall and hailstorms, a bit like in France, the south suffered from drought. However, the overall quality of the grapes is expected to be good, with potential for exceptional wines in certain regions. As for volumes, 41 million hectoliters are estimated for the 2024 harvest, which is 7% more than last year, but still 13% less than the 5-year average. But still, it's stronger than France in Italy, so Italy will regain its #1 spot as the biggest wine producing nation in the world this year. By the way, before we move on to Spain, the US and South America, what I would like to do here is that if you're watching this video from one of those countries that I'm mentioning and even others that I may have missed, or if you have more information about them because you work in the industry or else specific regions, more insights. Essentially, I can't get into every detail and every appellation here. Let us know in the comments what you know so everyone gets a bit broader picture with a little bit more details. Let's have a conversation and get everyone greater info on what to expect from 2024. Let's talk in the comments. Finally, after 2 years of extreme heat and drought all across Spain, 2024 has been a vintage with more moderate temperatures, more in line with the historic averages, and generally favorable conditions. So we're going to see greater volumes from Spain more wine produced. Still some droughts here and there, the east and the archipelagos, a little bit too much rain in some areas, including the north, again just like in France, but some problems, but overall the Spanish wine production is expected to recover a bit from the historically low volumes of 2023, but not quite enough to oust France from the second place in the world wine producer ranking, so Spain remains third. Italy, France and Spain. In the US, it's been a little shaky to say the least, especially in California. Washington's vintage was generally positive, with some moderate temperatures and sufficient rainfall. The overall production is expected to be average, but good quality wines. Oregon's conditions were also favorable, moderate temperatures and appropriate rainfall, solid vintage with good quality wines. California's 2024 vintage, however, was a bit of a mixed bag. Some areas benefited from moderate weather conditions, others faced, as you would have heard, heat waves and wildfires. The overall production is expected to be a little lower than average there, with a focus on quality, therefore over quantity, but good. If that's anything to go by, the Napa Valley Vintners Association said this in an article titled "A Classic Vintage for Napa Valley," quote, "Another noteworthy harvest described as dynamic and rich in flavor, the 2024 vintage promises to deliver quality wines that capture the unique character of Napa Valley, blending boldness with elegance." End quote. This sounds to me like a bit of a bunch of unpalatable marketing stuff, but it's an indication that things have been fine in California. Do you know anything else about 2024 in Cali? Let us know in the comments. On to Malbec and other grapes. Argentina's 2024 vintage was challenging, with some extreme heat waves, also drought affecting many regions. Argentina is huge, so of course there's going to be differences, but apparently some good snowfall around the Andes Mountains and rainfall in the winter and spring, so we have good levels of water, and then heat later on in the season, so overall a good vintage it seems. I read a winemaker saying in the drinks business, it's been a hot year but a truly great vintage with wines showing the freshness from a cool year. So hot year but cool wines apparently. So Argentina is actually going to be doing quite well this year. As for Chile, the vintage was generally positive with moderate temperatures and enough water again, so the overall production is expected to be average with good quality wines. Briefly and finally, in Australia, after 2023 saw the lowest crush in more than 20 years, 23 was pretty bad, the 2024 vintage was up by 9%, but still was below the 10-year average, so not all that great. Same stories there, very varied, extremely dry and wearing sunnies in South Australia, heavy rainfalls and taking out the brollies in Victoria, warm and dry in Western Australia. It hasn't exactly been a bloody bonzo down under, mate. Yeah, sorry about that. So what do we make of all of this? Well, I'm going to need a glass of wine after this because anyways, you're going to let me know in the comments what you think. But the 2024 vintage was a year of contrast, to say the least, with some countries/regions experiencing favorable conditions and others facing really significant challenges. What's striking to me is how wet it was in some areas, way too wet in France, which is not common at all, like really rainy, favorably raining in Spain and Italy and South America, which is great, but then we had heat waves and droughts and fires elsewhere, so The bombshell overall is that according to the OIV, the International Wine Organization, and their first World Wine Production Outlook for 2024, published late in November, just a few weeks ago, and gathering data from 29 countries, the world wine production for 2024 is estimated to experience a 2% decline from the already low 2023 volume and a drop by 13% reduction against the 10-year average. This is terrible. This positions the 2024 production as potentially the smallest global output since 1961. Ouch! More than 50 years. But don't forget, as I said in my video about the 2024 vintage in France, that as a whole the global wine production has been steadily declining for years, year after year, for decades. So it is somewhat expected that we're going to be beating records after records in the future. But here we go, 2024 is a new wine world record, and now at least you know. More videos for you here. Keep watching the channel. Don't forget to like this video to support and subscribe to help us make more videos like this. A little like at least to support if you've enjoyed the video. Stay tuned and I will see you soon in the wonderful world of wine. Cheers.